Hey guys, it's Marissa from Push Past Paralysis, and today we have a special guest, my friend Lance, who is able-bodied, and he's gonna ask me, obviously a disabled woman, some questions.
Hi.
So go ahead. I'm an
Okay.
open book.
Okay, Marissa. So we've known for each other for what, about 5 months now?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. And
Five,
there's
six.
questions you wanted to ask me, and questions I'm intrigued to ask a disabled person. So we kill two birds with one stone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. First question: do you find the language used to describe disabled people in order to be inclusive as patronising or appropriate, e.g., differently abled, using a wheelchair instead of being in one, or physically challenged? Do you find those expressions patronising or inclusive?
They're just annoying to say, like as a YouTuber and as like an influencer and a coach, you have to use certain language to come up in the algorithms.
Mm-hmm.
So I do use them, but in my everyday life, hardly ever. And it doesn't offend me like it offends a lot of people in the disabled community. But I don't know, it's just call me whatever you want. Like, I'm not going to get offended. I'm not going to,
Hi,
say,
Bob.
oh, I like this term better. What?
Hi, Bob. Okay.
I don't identify as a man, if you want to go there.
Well, you did say I could call you whatever I wanted. Okay.
Yeah. You
So,
just take it very literally.
all right. When you get drunk, do you have to pre-plan toilet trips or just go when you feel like it, like an able-bodied person?
I don't really drink, and I've never actually been drunk. I've been buzzed. But yeah, I do pre-plan. Like, if I'm going on trips and stuff, you have to plan where the bathroom is and, different things like that. And I do go somewhat on a schedule.
Do you find where you live to be sort of disabled friendly with regard to that kind of thing, or not? Because I live in Italy and it's there, but it's not prevalent. It's not kind of like, you know.
The accessibility would be the only topic for any like category of people that I feel like should be universal. I don't think that, especially because the way the United States is, we have states' rights, and the Americans with Disabilities Act is supposed to be for the whole United States, but everything, even within one state, is very different accessibility wise. So, like, I can go into a bathroom in a restaurant and it can be one size that's considered Americans with Disabilities Act compliant, go into another one of a completely different size, and that one too is Americans with Disabilities Act compliant. But in one, I can close the door, have ample room to move around, get on the toilet, get off the toilet. And then in the other one, I'll have to leave my wheelchair outside the stall, have a lady that I don't even know watching to make sure that nobody opens the door if I can't close the door because it's too small.
And that's actually compliant.
And it is, you can tell because it's bigger than the able-bodied stalls.
Mm-hmm.
So then you know that they're trying to be ADA compliant, whether or not it is the correct size and a size that has been okayed by the state. I don't know, or the country, or however they do it. I don't know. But what I think they should do, if you really want me to rant on this, is they should be bringing somebody in a wheelchair to things like bathrooms and to places like stores, because that's why I don't shop, because going through the aisles is insane. Mm-hmm. Like, you can have clothes where like you feel like you're going through a car wash because you have to push through it. It's nuts. So I don't like to shop. Thank God, that's the only thing I like about the pandemic, and I didn't really shop before that, but online shopping is a lifesaver.
Yeah, I feel the same about online teaching. So I'm a teacher, but it's interesting you said that, because you think about it, it's so simple. Say, okay, or even just get a wheelchair and put it in. No, there's no maneuverability. That's not even a 3-point turn. It's a 12-point turn to get back out. No. So yeah,
like I'm not one that ever tells an able-bodied person, oh, like, you can't. We wouldn't have a lot of our rights if it wasn't for able-bodied people coming together and doing that because we are considered a minority. There's more able-bodied people in the world. It's just a fact. But as far as like a physical aspect of it, I do think somebody in a wheelchair, or like you said, a wheelchair, like put some of them in a wheelchair for a day, see how easy it is for them to get around.
No, what I meant was you could literally just go borrow a wheelchair. So no, yeah, okay, no, doesn't fit. Let's make it a bit bigger.
That's what I mean. Like they can easily get a wheelchair to decide like the length of an aisle or the width of a door or whatever, like a doorway. Just put a wheelchair, regardless of whether or not a person's in it, through the door to be able to tell if it's big enough.
Right. But continuing on from that, do you think that, I mean, it seems to me from what you've just described that because they're making it compliant to the, I'm assuming that's a national law, because America is different from both my country of residence, which is United Kingdom, and where I live now, which is Italy. So you have state laws, you have federal laws. So presumably when they're compliant, but they're different sizes, you think it's simply not anything other than they just didn't realize? Because it's only when you said that, they went, you could get someone with a wheelchair.
I think a lot of the time they don't realize they're not being compliant, especially if like they evidently, it's easiest for me to use the bathroom example, but clearly if the one stall is bigger, they're trying to be compliant. So I honestly don't think they are doing it on purpose to make it too small. They just don't know. There should be one measurement. I think it should be the biggest one, because there's no way that like big motorized wheelchairs could fit in some of these stalls. There's no way. I always have a small manual one, but I look at some of them, I'm like, there's no way that other wheelchairs can fit in here. It's
just that there was a comedian years ago, I can't remember his name, in England, who made this politically sort of right on, and he said, "Yeah, we see disabled people as different because they only give them one toilet for both sexes in pubs." And I'm thinking, no, that's to save money. They're not doing it for that reason. They're doing it because there's a lot less disabled people going to the pub, and therefore they only need one toilet. And it's like, well, if you have a disabled man, disabled woman, that costs the pub money. So while it may seem a little bit harsh, and he was deliberately, in my opinion, taking an angle of we are objectifying disabled people, as opposed to, well, doesn't need two fucking toilets.
Well, can I give my opinion on that? First of all, we do have two separate bathrooms, so I would imagine there's well, I don't know about now, because they have like the unisex bathrooms coming out too.
Well, but, this was 30 years ago.
But they will have a male and a female, a stall in each. But on the flip side, this is exactly what I was going to say, is if they had it more available, more disabled people would show up. That's what they're not understanding, is a lot of people like me, I'll show up to any place, and if I have to, I'll ask somebody, can you help me? Regardless of whether or not it's accessible or not. A lot of people with disabilities will not do that. They'll stay home and believe that the world is not equipped for them. They had a business, let's say locally, open up, and they never went anywhere, but it was ADA compliant and it was accessible for them. All of a sudden, they'd have this social butterfly life. So I feel like a lot of the disabled people are waiting for the world to be accessible, and it's never going to be 100% accessible. But if the business people are doing things because people with disabilities are not showing up, they're doing it wrong. Like they will have more people with disabilities show up if people with disabilities can visually see or call or whatever and find out that it is accessible for them.
Cool. Yeah.
It shuts down a person's desire to have that experience if they find out that it's not accessible. Like, I'll give you an example. I don't really watch the show, but I knew somebody who was on the challenge on MTV, and a few years ago they did a premiere party. Several years ago now, they did a premiere party, and I had never been to the place, but I knew it was in New York City. Now, if you look up New York City anywhere, it will tell you that it's one of the most accessible cities in the world. Not really, because a lot of it is old. Now, with the Americans with Disabilities Act, prior to 1990, you don't have to have accessibility in your establishment. Like I said, a lot of New York City is old. So like the Soho buildings and stuff like that, all of them, they have stairs. Some of them have built like a electric ramp off to the side, which is great. Like, I'm not saying, oh, burn all the buildings down and make everything accessible. No, if you want to do an add-on to make things accessible for somebody, please do so. But so I've never been to this bar restaurant before. So I wrote in the challenge group, I'm like, has anybody ever been there? Do we know if it's accessible or not? I would really like to go. Weeks went by, nobody was answering. So I'm like, you know what? I really want to go, so I'm going to go. 2 days before the event, I get a message. Shoot, I'm sorry, we just saw this. The place is not accessible. I'm sorry. I'm like, you know what? At this point, I had my heart set on going. So I went, had people I'd never met help me up. And then my friend that was there helped me down with a couple of other guys. So I'm more than happy to just go somewhere and just deal with it, where a lot of people are like, no, unless the world is exactly as I need it, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to be happy. If you wait for that, you're never going to live.
Yeah. Adaptable and disadaptable, man. Okay, hang on a second. Okay. Does it piss you off when people are walking slowly in front of you on a pavement, as we say in the UK, and blocking your path?
I need the shirt. I want to punch slow walking people in the back of the head. That's literally all I'll say to that.
Able-bodied people feel exactly the same way, or at least I do. Right. Have you ever fantasized about upgrading your wheelchair to something like the one Professor Xavier uses in the X-Men movies?
I've had 2 sort of motorized wheelchairs before, and I'll tell you a funny story. When I was in 6th grade, I think it was, it was middle school. No, it was 10th grade. I'm sorry. It was 10th grade.
I'll edit that later.
Yeah. No, you don't have to. I just messed up. But it was 10th grade, and we did a Washington, D.C. trip. And Washington, D.C. is near Arlington, Virginia, which is where the soldiers that have died for the country are buried. And even the ones that didn't die in battle, a lot of them are buried there. So we went, and 2 days before the trip, I had gotten a wheelchair it wasn't a motorized wheelchair where you press a button. It was basically battery operated wheels where you had to charge them and you push and it will like push for you. You only have to push a little bit and it'll keep going for a little bit. And then you go again and go again. So I was just learning this wheelchair. And so we get to the hotel room, and a friend of mine who she grew up on my block, so she knew me well and knew how to, help me if I needed it. We're in the hotel room, and I'm putting stuff away, putting clothes away, and I go to back up, and I backed up a little bit, and the chair spun around like crazy. We must have sounded like we were wrecking the place, because my teacher knocks on the door to make sure we're okay, and he's like, are you girls okay? I'm like, I literally can't get back to you because I'm backed into a corner now with this wheelchair. Fast forward to actually going to Arlington Cemetery. It was my first experience that the chair will run out of battery. It was fully charged before I left, and I didn't wheel anywhere because we were like taking cars and stuff to the different sites that we were going to. So I get to the bottom of the first hill. There's 2 hills in Arlington Cemetery. And I go to push up the hill, and the chair locks more than a manual chair will lock. Like, it locks to the point where you can't move it at all. So I had like 2, 3 of my friends pushing me up the hill to get me because what was I going to do? Just stay there while everybody was like keep going and going, and I didn't know where everybody was going. So they did what they could to get me up. Then miraculously, the chair starts operating again as we're going down the first hill. So they're still holding on to the chair because they were pushing me up the hill, and then so they were being dragged now since the chair's on again down the other hill. Of course, my teacher was there, and he goes, "Girls, what are you doing?" I'm like, "We're not doing this on purpose. We can't stop the chair now." And then you know the soldiers that have to stand by the graves. He's supposed to be all like very serious. He's cracking a smile, trying not to laugh because I'm going, "If I die, bury me in that empty spot," because it just wouldn't stop.
Yeah.
And then the chair was fine after that. But there was times where I would be in school and it would stop on the second floor. So I would have to have my dad, who was alive at the time, come up, give me the charger and charge it like in the corner of the classroom. It was a nightmare. That's why I use manual chairs.
Okay, yeah. So simplicity is the key.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I just remember the one Dr. Nefario had in Despicable Me. You know, it rockets, so you just take off. So that's one of that would be a fantasy. But you know,
I might try it, but I would never sustain it. I would never want to have to do it all day, every day.
Further to number 3 and 4, have you ever wanted to have a really loud horn on the wheelchair to get people to move the fuck out of the way?
Yes and no. I don't really need it because I have a mouth. And I have no problem telling people to move out of my way, but a horn would be nice.
Okay. And question 6, or maybe a machine gun?
I'll direct you back to the question about punching people in the back of the head. That's what I would use that for.
Okay.
If we're allowed to say that.
You say what you want.
No, I don't know how that's going to go with us posting that, but keep it.
All right. Number 7. If you found a joke directed at disabled people funny, but an able-bodied person took offense, would you take issue with the able-bodied person?
Yes.
Please elaborate.
Because, like, I feel like comedy, and at least in the United States, we have the First Amendment. Mm-hmm. It's completely taken away, and I like to push it. If I feel like something's being threatened or taken away, I'll push it to the point where it's making other people uncomfortable, just so that I know it's not being taken. Even if it's people who disagree with me, I will defend their right to be wrong and say what they want to say, but I will defend their right to say it. So I feel like especially comedy should be untouchable because it's a joke. Like, and if you're going to take it seriously, you don't belong watching that show or attending that comedy show if you can't take a joke. Like the Will Smith, Chris Rock thing.
Yeah.
They're both actors. They're both comedians. Yeah, okay, maybe he got a little offended after his wife gave him the evil eye after he laughed at the joke. He laughed at the joke.
No, I know.
First, and then she gives him the evil eye, and then he goes up and punches. But I just think that you need to be able to take it, especially if you're in attendance of a comedy show.
Mm-hmm. I think I totally agree with you with that, because this T-shirt I'm wearing, if you get the chance, listen to some of their material. They are a very rude English rock band, and they're all in the 60s now, but they basically, nothing was untouchable. And they were found offensive, banned from a lot of places, but they're very talented musicians, very good lyricists, and the songs, in my opinion, are funny because it's comedy. It's not sincere. And the singer was interviewed, and they said, "Do you realise your songs are offensive?" And he said, "Yeah, but we're tongue in cheek." He said, "Think about some of the rap songs you get, which are very misogynistic and actually mean it." And it's a good.
I mean, I don't walk, but if I did, I wouldn't walk on eggshells. So
yeah. There's a great quote from Robert E. Howard, who wrote the Conan the Barbarian books, which Conan is apparently saying civilized men tend to be ruder than savages because they know they can insult people without running the risk of getting their head split open. Which I thought was a great line. And it's like, yeah, okay, if you're dealing with a society where you might die for being rude, you're probably less likely to make jokes at people's expense.
Who knows now in this world?
Yeah, I find cancel culture is that I don't even fully understand that. I think that's basically just taking someone out of existence. I think is the general gist of that. But it's highly irritating because I'm a big fan of Ricky Gervais because of the fact that he's so.
He was hysterical at the Oscars.
I don't think he did the last Oscars, did he? Because he got banned. The last
No,
one he did,
it was.
yeah.
I think it was the one before, a couple before that. Yeah,
he was.
I think it might have been was it pre-pandemic, or did he make jokes? He was making jokes.
I saw it on YouTube. I can't remember when it was. It wasn't.
Yeah, it was a while ago, but he's funny.
No, but the thing is, he basically says, "It's why would it be off limits?" There was a story some time ago, and verbatim, but there was a guy who taught his pug dog to do a Nazi salute, and everybody found this hilarious, including David Baddiel, who's a Jewish comedian. And he was convicted under hate crime laws in Scotland, which is where he lives, for having put the video of the dog doing that on YouTube. And the general consensus, and I don't want to misquote David Baddiel, I'm not being cautious for any reason other than this is going to be published, and is simply that David Baddiel, as I remember it, said, this is comedy. He's not being sincere. He doesn't actually want to gas the Jews, which was the code phrase to get the dog to do this. It's like, it's silly, and okay, it's a bit sick, but at the end of the day, it is meant to be silly. He's not sincere, and
well, why don't you talk a little bit about your? I think you said is it the UK, or is it where you live now, where they have like these laws like about like if somebody's offended, like I don't know. We've talked about it a few times, like.
Okay, the basis of it was I was in the police for 3 years and 3 months. And here's the book I wrote about being in the police.
Yeah, you can promote whatever you want on here.
Stab-proof scarecrows on Amazon. But your copy's on its way, Marissa.
And I'll leave a link to it in the comments too for everybody.
Basically, there is a rule. As far as I'm aware, it's not law, but it's been 14 years since I left. So things may have changed. I've not kept up to. I don't even live in the UK anymore. If you make a remark and the person it's directed at finds it funny, like I make a remark to you about disabled people, you find it funny, but someone who's in the room or present doesn't like it, I'm in trouble for having said it, regardless of the fact it was directed at you. So it could be an able-bodied person. If they take offense, it's still objectively wrong. But to take it to another level, if they're in the room and I didn't know they were there, I just didn't know, or they were hiding, I'm still in trouble. But to take it to another level, you're in trouble for not having reported me. So basically, not only you didn't know that bit, did you? You're in trouble for not reporting me. I'm in trouble for saying it. The only person who's safe is the one who grasped. So the story I told you today was there was a van full of cops, not called a rowdy van, driving down the road. Testosterone, no guns, so one hand on their buttons, listening for calls, radio calls for assistance for usually pub violence, and it's either called the fight van or the pub. It wasn't when I was in the police. It wasn't an experience I had. It's one I read about on an anonymous blog by a police inspector who is approximately your, I think, lieutenant rank. Anyway, the inspector's in the passenger seat, the sergeant is driving, and the officers are in the back. And a woman came out on a hen night and went, "Oh, boys," hey! And lifted up the t-shirts so you could see her boobs. And they all just sat there apparently doing this. And she was quite offended. Ironically, she was quite offended and went, "Oh, what's the matter? Don't tell me you seem better than them," and walked off. And on the anonymous blog, which is how we knew this had happened, the inspector said, "Madam, they were smashing, but I couldn't have said anything, so I got sacked, and so would have everybody else in the van." So even though it was spontaneous, by reacting to it in a positive way or laughing or making, "Well, all right, darling," I said, "What the hell?" So this basically came from a long time ago. It was 2004. There was a undercover journalist joined the police in the north of England. I think it was Yorkshire, but I don't want to specify what force because I can't remember. And he worked for a year doing the training and covertly filming and recording what officers were saying. And there was some quite awful remarks being made, racist, sexist, homophobic, etc. And when that was premiered on TV, the very next morning, a lot of people lost their jobs because, and they.
I mean, that is an extreme example, but my reason for asking you to tell that story is because it reminds me a lot of like the protests. I'm not going to name organizations or whatever, but it reminds me a lot of the protests where a race that wasn't even um had nothing to do with the cause was more offended by what was happening to the people of that race than a lot of people who weren't participating in the cause.
No, it's basically, my opinion is that people use stuff as pretext to kick off. So you'll get, okay, I'm so angry about this person I never met before being brutalized by the police. I'm now going to go and loot a new television from that shop. Excuse me? And I'm going to set fire to it as well. He's from the same minority group that were killed by the police.
Exactly.
I'm so angry I didn't even notice. So,
yeah, the business person's business that was burnt down is exactly what you're supposed to be fighting for.
It winds me the fuck up because you get this. There's this mentality now that there's a right, the left are right and the right are wrong, and that, as you said, First Amendment. And when I was at university 32 years ago, was that I disagree with what you say, but I would defend to the death your right to say it.
Right to
say it. By throwing
exactly.
eggs at you and turning off your microphone, but they won't ban you from talking. They'll just debate with you. They may use covert guerrilla tactics to try and prevent you having a talk, but they won't try and pass a law to silence you. And it's just left-wing fascism. It's horrible. It's like, you not only comedy, but I think everyone, Elon Musk was talking today about allowing Donald Trump back on Twitter. Okay, good. He said, I don't like the guy and I think his politics are awful, but I mean, he's entitled to have an opinion unless he starts, the capital rights, the exception. If he starts advocating illegal acts on social media, fine. Then,
I mean, if you're going to allow terrorist groups on social media who have literally done horrible things to their citizens, you can let any president of the United States on. I'm not even talking about when he was just like an actor on a TV show or a businessman. When he was the president of the United States, to ban him was disgusting to me.
Yeah, no, I totally disagree with it. And I think it's basically, it showed me that the president doesn't have any real power with regard to what they can and can't do, because that's a different story and for a discussion for another time. But as observers looking at your country's politics, we kind of go, well, because I remember being in Australia when Hillary was in the lead, going out to do some shopping and coming back, finding out Donald Trump had won because he passed the threshold. And then, okay. So it was, But like I say, in England, it is incredibly restrictive. And as an example of the police then, because that documentary that I mentioned, I joined the volunteer police. And for those who are uninitiated, we have special constabulary, which are unpaid volunteers. And I think you have them in the United States, but they vary from state to state and county to county. I was a volunteer cop, and I joined just after that documentary had aired, maybe 6 months. I didn't even know it had been on. But the training was very geared to race and diversity. First question I was asked in my interview was not, why do you want to be a cop? It was, when did you last hear a sexist, racist or homophobic remark? And what did you do about it? Huh? And then I didn't know the context. And it turns out they were just basically the commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, which is the one that covers the majority of London. I can't remember who it was back then, but he was in a room watching it on the TV. There's a lot of very senior officers in that force. It's a huge force. And they were all in the next room. When it had finished airing, he said, I'm not resigning, but we're changing. So it wasn't his force that happened it, but they realized they needed change. But my problem with it was we spent 1 hour on how to use pepper spray, which cops carry and civilians can't in the UK. 4 hours on a baton, or baton, I think you say. And we spent 6 weeks in total over a year on race and diversity. So, okay, so I understand Sikhs, but I can't actually arrest one properly if they get violent because I've been given 4 hours now to use my baton and an hour on pepper spray, which is basically a water pistol version of the actual stuff, water in a canister. And it was dangerous. And the thing is, you have to refresh every year, but all they'll teach you is the grappling stuff and maybe the pepper spray. You never relearn, or at least I didn't relearn baton techniques. So the kind of, I just found it frustrating that you can't have an opinion anymore. You weren't allowed to. I say something to you, we're friends. I make a joke about people in wheelchairs, and you go, "Oh my god," and then I make
the jokes.
You like the joke, but someone else would say, I understand you made a joke about Marissa. Yeah, she found it funny. Yeah, well, John didn't. John can walk. You know, it doesn't matter. I'd still be in trouble for having said it. So
And that is sick to me.
it's. I think the idea.
I don't like
If I
when,
was
like
you,
I've
it's
told
not
you
you.
before.
But I'd be like, if it was directed at me, I found it funny, and someone else at the fence say, "Do you know how fucking insulting this is? That I'm not allowed to find jokes funny." That you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, and that's the, I don't like, we've talked about this. I don't like when people that I know are uncomfortable to say something to me. And the reason that I'm so uncomfortable with that is because it's so on a large scale, so many people are being made to feel uncomfortable. So that's why it bothers me so much. I don't like that at all. Like if you can't, I'm not superior to anybody. Like, go figure. Like, the minority communities and like the, what do they call it? I don't know. There's a word that it's escaping me right now because I don't consider myself part of it. But like, I'm considered privileged in some way if I separate myself from it and like think things are funny that I'm not supposed to. I don't know. It's stupid.
And I think it's complicated in every culture, but I think the problem is what you've got is my grandfather grew up in an era where no one was gay. My father grew up in an era where only famous people were gay. And then I've grown up in an era where it was slowly becoming okay to be gay. And now it's absolutely normal to be gay. And I have a problem with it, you know.
I don't care.
I've slept with a bloke, consider myself heterosexual, but hey, that was fun. But the point is, what about the people from the previous generations who weren't given transition training? Okay, they were told this is not only wrong, it's also illegal, or it's legal, but it's odd. And then suddenly the laws change. And not only do those laws change, that's what laws are for. They're to be adapted. It's a democracy. And then suddenly, oh, by the way, those old laws, they were wrong too, and you shouldn't have ever thought they were right. I'm sorry. And so give these guys some kind of like transition time to actually get used to this new will, not just tell them everything they ever believed and they were told at school and as they grew up was wrong. And that's what winds me up. It's like, I don't believe a lot of this shit. There's a lot of stuff like on Instagram and Twitter about Greece being cancelled, the movie, because of the Danny coming onto Sandy in the car after she's trying to stop him. And,
oh, come on.
And then
they want
no single sex partners at the dance at the end.
If you don't have a parent or a guardian, or it shouldn't be up to the government to tell you what you can and cannot watch or find funny, and it shouldn't be up to society or cancel culture to like, okay, let's say a kid watches a movie where like something is set on fire. Most kids are not going to go set something on fire. It's a movie. And it's not up to the actors or anybody but the family or whoever's close to the kid if they don't have a family, because that's the first thing cancel culture will bring up when they say that the teacher has to raise the kid, which is a whole other issue. I don't know. Things are taken too literally nowadays, and I don't think the majority of people do.
My theory is that when people decide they need to change, like instead of the undercover journalists, which really did shake up the police, and the effects being felt to this day. This is like 18 years later. Is that because the police in the 70s were a lot more. The body language was very aggressive. At least in the UK, there's a story I heard. A guy I went to school with. He's a couple of years older than me. That he was ne'er-do-well from the town I grew up in, and the cop said, "Do you want to have a fist fight?" Because the guy kept mouthing off, and apparently the cop went. It wasn't just out of the blue, "Hi, how are you? Do you want a fist fight?" He kept threatening the cop, and he said, "Let's go around the back of the supermarket." They had a dust stop. The cop won, and that was the end of it. And he said, "I respected him for that." The guy is now grown up, and he said, "I respected him." He wasn't like a kid; he was about 18, 19. He said, "You imagine that now? You know, it's like he said, we can settle this as men. It won't be on the record. I'm not going to arrest you." They had a punch up, and they moved on. And he said, "It's not right. I mean, it's inappropriate." But it was like, well, that's one way of dealing with the situation. And then you move on, and then everything's now much more controlled and okay, but no one seemed to know how to deal with stuff. So instead of actually saying, okay, we're going to get rid of the rotten apples, fire the people who made the racist remarks in the show, and then say, let's all be excellent to each other, Bill and Ted, what we do is we then change it to 6 weeks racial diversity training. over a year, and 4 hours on how to use, stick to beat people with, and an hour to use stuff that will hurt their eyes. So I'm like, yeah, things really aren't being handled by very intelligent people. So
yeah, the criminals or the people who do something wrong are punishing everybody because everybody's being made responsible for their actions now, and I think that's wrong. Deal with it personally on a one-on-one or however private basis. You don't have to punish everybody because it's stupid.
Like decimation, the Roman Empire, the Roman soldiers, if the regiment maybe, if they messed up or they showed cowardice in battle, they would kill every 10th man, but they make the other 9 beat that guy to death. So that was an effective way to make sure people toe the line. But yeah, it punishing everybody for the actions of the few kind of thing. And I find it frustrating because there are ways of communicating now that are very restrictive, and people watching this won't be aware. But our daily meeting, you said, like, you just went, "Can I tell you something?" And you said, "You don't have to be careful what you say to me." So I was, without even realizing it, sort of hesitating before I said stuff to the group, because I think we were talking about disability issues or something, and there's always that part of my brain, the little voice, warning me that I might cause offence because of, the culture.
Yeah, and it wasn't at you, because I know, like, it's a lot to do with where you're from and your background, but a lot of people feel that way, and it drives me nuts. Like, I don't want people to be afraid. Like, if I take offense to something, that's on me. It's not on you for saying it. And it's on me to figure out why something in me was triggered. And I'm using myself as an example, but anybody, if you're offended by something, that's a you problem.
I'm going to give you an example now, which you're not going to believe. Okay, this is now ended, thankfully. But I think it was Rowan Atkinson who played Mr. Bean and Blackadder. He was part of a movement called Amend Section 5. Now, the Public Order Act is a very important act in England, and the number 1 is a riot. Number 2 is a violent disorder. 3 is an affray. 4 is behaviour intended to cause harassment, alarm, or distress, and a 5, which is the lowest, is behaviour likely to cause harassment, alarm, or distress. It was very good when we were on duty. There were the drunk laws, like drunk and disorderly, drunk and incapable, drunk in a public place, which is an offence. So you can make people move on, or even arrest them if they wouldn't move on. Great way to get silly people who were drunk and argumentative on the streets. Section 5 was if people were getting lippy and using foul language or insulting stuff. Now, the problem was the definition included the word insulting. So it says behaviour which is going to cause harassment, alarm, or distress, which is, I can't remember the full description, but the word insulting was in there, which basically meant you could interpret that anything anyone said.
Exactly.
It didn't have to be insulting to you. It could be perceived, because it was likely to cause harassment, alarm, or distress by virtue of being, through an objective test, insulting. And this is a true story. You ready? Look in the camera, because this is gravitas. There was a guy at a demonstration, I think, and it's a true story. You can Google this. He said to a police officer, a mounted policeman, "Excuse me, do you know your horse is gay?" And the cop arrested him because a gay person might have been offended because they found that insulting. That's a true story. And he went to court and he was fined, and he refused to pay it. And as far as I'm aware, it was quietly dropped because the embarrassment it caused the police force. There are other examples that were as bad as that. I know a cop who, when I worked with the police, he twice, I didn't see this, but he told me, he twice arrested people calling him Four Eyes because he wore glasses, because they were drunk and he wanted an excuse to get them off the street. So he used Section 5's insulting definition to get them off streets. And there are other examples. There's stuff like that. You can Google that. But they eventually amended Section 5 to remove the word insulting because it was becoming more and more controversial. This Monty Python-esque fucking law was resulting in people getting arrested calling police forces gay. And it was just retrospectively very silly.
That's what drives me crazy about, like, putting too many laws on things, is because it could be interpreted in so many different ways where it includes everything, and then nobody has any rights.
Yeah. So if I say, if I was to stand here and go, "I hate disabled people," in public, not in private, that's a Section 5. If I say, "I hate you and you're a disabled person," I swear, that's a 4. Okay. So 3 was if the two people fighting, and then violent disorder is up to 8 people, I think, and a riot is a riot. But the best thing is, this is a side note, you can arrest for a riot, but there's a law which states that if a riot happens and people are convicted of it at court, the constabulary, the police force where that happened, have to cover the cost for any damages caused. So the police aren't stupid. Whenever they arrest people for riots, they split them into groups of 8 and book them for violent disorder. I like that one. That's quite crafty. So you'll never get a conviction for riot. You'll be arrested for rioting, but you'll be convicted of violent disorder with 7 other people. So I like that story.
That's funny.
Yeah. Anything else you'd like to know? Because I have one more question for you. My question for you was, okay. What's the hardest part of being in a wheelchair?
When things aren't accessible, like near me. I'm not going to say where it is, but there's no curb cut very close to where I am, and there is like
is that what that's called? That gap where it goes down. That's called a curb.
Yeah, curb. Well, I call it curb cut. I think.
No, 51 years old, and I never knew what that was called. I just thought the bit where the curb's lower. But thank you for that, because it's got a name.
Yeah.
Curb cut. Okay.
Yeah. That's what I call it, curb cut. That drives me nuts. Like, I mean, I'm used to it, where I'll deal with it, but it's just like, why is it? And on a large scale in America, curbs and sidewalks are terrible. So I feel like if we want to have anything the same, like, because like I said, America has state laws, and I'm a very big advocate of state laws instead of federal government having too much power. But if I wanted everything the same, it would be sidewalks and accessibility, in the towns, because there's very few that like are accessible for everybody, and that would promote independence for people with disabilities. I feel like it's assumed too often that somebody's going to be there to help.
Yeah.
And like something that I'll run into a lot of the times if I'm with somebody, people will automatically assume it's somebody trained or who like works for me or like is my mom, and they won't help. But if I'm by myself, it's like, oh my God, this like damsel in distress needs help. Let's do everything we can for her. But yet the person who's like juggling bags and trying to push the wheelchair, they get no help because it's automatically assumed.
I think that's ignorance, really, because there's a certain psychology. There are thieves that travel on the public transport network in Rome, and they are little gypsy girls. And the reason is most men don't want to have a fight. Nearly all men won't hit a woman, and hardly anybody in this world is ever going to slap a kid. So they use the little kids, mainly girls, to steal because they're not like to be confronted. And I think it's just that psychological block. So going back to that, now you've told me, yeah, it'd be nice to offer the person carrying the bag some help. It's a blind spot I think people have, is that they're not doing it for anything other than simply not realizing. Because it's like people stroke guide dogs, and you can hear the person go, "Please leave my dog alone. It's working." Yeah. And it actually has signs on it saying, because I always say, "Is your dog working?" "Yes." "Okay." And she said, "But thank you for asking. Most people don't." And so that kind of thing. But it's something had I not been told, "Oh, a lovely doggy," and then it winds the trainers up, it winds the person using the dog up, because it's like, it's not here to be fussed. It was actually work. That's my eyes. Leave it alone.
Yeah.
And it's not done with ill intent. It's just ignorance.
Well, no, because when you see an animal, sometimes it's your instinct to want to go like pet it or say hello, but it. And then a lot of the times it's mostly guide dogs, like for the seeing impaired.
Mm-hmm.
You don't realize that they can't see until they go to look at you, and then you can kind of realize it. But if they're just sitting there and the dog is there, a lot of the time you won't realize it, and you'll by instinct go to pet it or something or say hello.
Yeah, I also think as well with, I mean, you live in New York, you've got a subway, we call it a metro here, and they're not so much because of COVID, but they're getting busier now with the restrictions easing. And personally, I cycle nearly everywhere unless it's raining, because I fucking hate public transport. But the I have tunnel vision. I'm sure 90% of other people do. You focus on what's immediately in front of you and what you need to do, because you're trying to blank out the fact you've got someone's armpit right in your face when it's busy, or you're next to a load of people, or someone stinks, or you just basically it's not a nice experience being on busy public transport. And I think probably a lot of the time people just simply, they're not situationally aware and they don't realise things. They're not trying to be assholes. They just don't know.
Yeah, a lot of people just don't realize, and then when you take too much offense to it, it's like that's another thing. Is like, I don't expect people who know nothing about a disabled life to completely understand. There's this notion now that like everybody has to be completely cognizant and understanding of everything that somebody else might think and go through, which is where, like how you were talking about the laws in the UK, like if you presume that something is offensive, like I don't want it to ever get like that here, where people are afraid to
if it's not
communicate.
like that, it's England's weird because
I
as another
gathered that.
example, I worked in England in schools, and because there's been some horrific incidents with regard to child abuse in England with people who were carers or teachers in schools, the famous one with the caretaker many years ago, you had a security check that was incredibly robust. I think I applied for mine. It took about 6 weeks to come back, and I'm on an update service, so that gets refreshed every year, and good, fair play. But they passed a few laws, and these were misunderstood quite dramatically. And it turned out they had no contact policies, so teachers absolutely could not touch kids for any reason. This was internal policies passed by either the councils or the authority that governed the school. And this would mean two kids kicking the shit out of each other, or someone getting a beating, and they would call the police rather than intervene. And a teacher I worked with here said when she was in England, she caught two kids trying to push a third one out of a second-story window. It's not funny, the imagery. And she ran in and pulled the kid back. So she didn't use any kind of force other than to stop the kid from going over.
Well, you couldn't wait for the cops to get there for that. That's an instinct. You had to act on it quick.
She pulled the kid back. All she did was she pulled him back in the room. And afterwards she was told by whoever, well done, but you shouldn't have done that. You should have told them to stop. And it turned out that these ridiculous policies around no contact were themselves illegal, because when I taught in England until I left 5 years ago, you had to do safeguarding training every year. And it turns out that someone had looked into this and said, these policies break common law. He says you have a duty to protect those in your care. And
exactly.
If you let someone get pushed out of a window, you are yourself guilty of gross criminal negligence. So they then clarify and says you may use force for self-defense, defense of another, to stop vandalism, to stop disruption. So someone's being noisy, you can escort them out of the room physically, and definitely if someone's being hiked out of a window. I said you just may not use violence as punishment anymore, like when I was a kid at school. And that was the problem, because people, he said, hang on, how is it okay to watch someone get pushed out of a window and not intervene? Because, oh, you shouldn't have touched them. Yeah, but and it turned out it was cowardice, really. People just made these laws they misinterpreted the new statutes and thought, oh, right, there's no contact anymore. No. You may use common sense if you have any.
Exactly. That I think is what's being outlawed, common sense, because nobody uses it anymore.
It's like you talk about being disabled. I had Christmas dinner with a friend of mine, and his friend is physically disabled. And he said to me, would you mind helping me get in, because he's got a basement apartment, down the stairs? No problem whatsoever, So fireman's carry. He got his arm there. I got my through the knee like that. My mate's the other side. We carry him down the stairs. Sits at the table. He has a lot to drink, and we carried him back upstairs. Got his wheelchair. Went off. Afterwards, I said, "It's just occurred to me. Maybe we should have asked him if he wanted to use the toilet before we carried him back upstairs." And I was the only person who thought of that, and I was too shy to say anything because, again, there's that little voice in my head. And I said he could have easily, because he had a lot to drink and he hadn't been to the toilet. I know that, but we would have known, because it would have been, oh, we now need to move out the way to let him get to the toilet. And it was like, he could have quite easily pissed over us or worse, and when we just didn't even think about it. And everyone went, yeah, to be fair, we probably could have suggested that. So it's funny that sort of hesitancy around it's common sense. Would you like to use the bathroom before we take you back upstairs? would have been just a normal question, but there was that little voice in my head making out that it would be controversial or, something else, to actually even ask him that question. So that's what.
Well, and that's what I like about people who aren't afraid. Like, you're not going to know unless you ask. And then the worst that happens is you learn. And it's not your fault if somebody's a dick about it.
No, but like I say, the laws make out. I mean, also it creates a certain paranoia. It's like, here, I'm the only person.
I noticed.
What do you mean?
Paranoia about asking
questions. Good heavens, yes. But now you brought it to my attention. It's easy to deal with. But it's like in the supermarket here. There's a big queue. You say in Italian, "Excuse me, could you open the till, please?" There's nobody else. Or if they say no, I go and find a supervisor and ask them instead. And 9.5 times out of 10, they'll open the till. But I said, why am I the only one that asks? Is everyone afraid they're going to go, excuse me, what did you say? Get out. Everybody, could you please kick him on the way out? And I think that's the same kind of fear people have when they, would you like to use the toilet before we take you back upstairs? There's that same kind of phobia of what reactions it's going to get. It's so, even talking about it with you now, it's like so obvious that that's just a normal thing to ask somebody. It's a courtesy call, you don't need to make a big deal of it. So
I think somebody with a disability, especially because many people with disabilities, their bladder and bowel are affected, that actually would be a courteous thing to do, is to ask them if they have to use the bathroom before you take them away from their, because like you said with the stairs, there might not have been a bathroom on the other floor. So, that's where another problem can come in.
But like I say, it's communication, because you have this situation like, I can communicate with you, but then I've known you for 3 months, as opposed to if you just said, someone had put us in touch and said, oh, my friend wants to do an interview with an able-bodied person, I'd be like this. Hello.
Oh, no.
Hi.
I'm actually really...
I'm not assuming that you're hanging and all that kind of shit.
No, I'm actually tempted to get somebody else with a disability to have you on their podcast, just to see how you would be.
Okay, fine. No, I probably wouldn't be as self-confident as I am with you, but I wouldn't be like I was up until you flagged it the other day. But that's a good idea. But get another able-bodied person to interview you without telling them that I've already done this with you. Make it somebody you don't know that you don't know. That would be interesting.
Make it somebody that I don't know.
When I edit this and we play it back, you'll be able to see how we look.
Said that.
Yeah. So
because
I'm happy to do that, but as long as you interview or you're interviewed by somebody who's able-bodied that doesn't know you. And it'd be interesting to see the report, because you and me have a certain level of trust. We know each other a little bit. We've shared stuff on the other group we belong to. So there's that foundation. So if it's something like that now, you can imagine, it's like...
it's funny because...
I'd just like to say that it's very nice to interview you. It's, please let me know if you feel uncomfortable at any point.
So as soon as you can get this to me, I'll get it out.
No, I'm happy, but you have to realise there's points in this that you need to edit out. It's just me answering the door, so I need to go through.
No, I know.
And I'm gonna have to, at the very least, listen to it once, stop, cut stuff out, and then start again. I've got.
Oh no, I know.
You'll notice because it will transition like that. There'll be a slight blur, but it's easy.
Hello,
to do.
I have a YouTube channel. I know how this goes.
Oh, sorry, Kushla, yeah. I didn't know you had that. So it's.
So wait. A person in a wheelchair can't have a YouTube channel? Is that what you're telling me?
Sorry.
You better keep this part in.
I forgot you had one was more accurate. But
wait, you forgot I had a wheelchair, or you forgot I had a YouTube channel?
You're really pushing it. I forgot you had a YouTube channel. Okay. No, it was the fact that you obviously know how to edit footage.
Yeah.
Because or maybe I'll just send the raw stuff to you and you can do it.
No, that's why I said you got to do it, because my phone won't be able to handle this length.
No, I can do it quite easily. That's why I keep looking down and I'm moving the mouse to check, because when I used to do this on Zoom, when the computer was full, it didn't warn me. It would just stop recording, and it was highly irritating. I think it's happened to Jenny. It's highly irritating because you've lost all these good conversations, and spontaneity will never be there again. So fucking bastard. So that's why I was checking that it was still there. But yes, and don't forget, viewers of Marissa's channel.
No, let me ask you. Okay, do you want to tell people about your book?
I'd love to tell people about my books. Okay, I am an author. My name is Lance Manley, and I've written a book about the police. And as you can see, it's very Lord of the Rings-esque, because I was very cross when I left the police, to be British about how I felt. Very fucked on. and it's basically about how awful it was to be a policeman. A lot of respect for cops, no respect for the management of them. And as a volunteer special constable, I was on duty on July the 7th, 2005, in the area of the bomb attacks, which was our September the 11th, 2005. Terrorist bombs went off in London, and just after that happened, I came in from my day job to back up the regular police. So that's something I'm proud of, that I was there that day. And as L.R. Manley, I've written 2 fantasy books for children with anti-bullying themes. So there you go. So L.R. Manley for kids and Lance Manley for adults. And there's 17 of my books on Amazon if you search for either of those 2 names. Anyway,
I'll put all your links, your Amazon, your YouTube channel in the description so that people can find you.
Okay. Yeah, on that note, so thank you. This has been interesting. And
thank you for doing this. It's fun.
It's been fun, yeah. It's been fun, yeah. Okay, last thing. Say goodbye.
Oh, wait. You didn't turn it off, did you?
Not yet. I'm about to turn it off and then not cut you off so I can then check that it's okay.
All right. Thank you guys for watching, and subscribe to the channel and subscribe to Lance's. Okay. Thanks, guys.